Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from Your Black World, and this week you saw an incident that occurred actually in my hometown, Louisville, Kentucky. Justice Olu Stevens really took it to the prosecutors and to some white victims of a crime in which they stated in their crime report that that as a result of the crime, their daughter was now in fear of black men. And Olu Stevens, he spoke up against that. He had an issue with that. He said he considered that to be racist. And since that time, all hellfire has dropped on top of his head because now people are trying to remove him from the bar. So to talk about this, I reached out to my main man, Mr. Ben Dixon, who runs the website, thebendixonshow.com. And I want to ask my brother, how you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing great, boys. Thanks for Dr. Watkins. Thanks so much for having me.
Doing great, great, man. And by the way, it's okay to call me Boyce sometimes. I mean, I don't care either way. In fact, you're gonna be Dr. Dixon pretty soon, right?
Yeah, it was getting a little rough there, just with some complications, but some things worked out really well for me, and I should have that PhD behind my name in the next 16 months. Right, which is relatively short considering how long the entire process is.
Yeah. I mean, people should know getting a PhD is really difficult, and you're not going to have. It's not if you're going to a decent school. It's not going to be. It's not going to be smooth sailing. So
right.
when he said he had some difficulties, folks, that's to be expected.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations, man. Now you did a great video where you were talking about Justice Stevens. You actually brought up some really good points, and that was why I wanted to talk to you about this. So first, I want to start off by asking you, what were your initial thoughts when you saw what Justice Stevens said? I mean, why do you think people had an objection with it?
My initial thoughts were, I don't want to. Confused, to be honest with you, a little bit confused because I was all over the place. I identified with the judge clearly. I thought the sentiments of what they were saying, I thought it was offensive. But then I took a few seconds and thought about how I would feel if someone broke into my home. And my response is probably a little more rough than people would expect. But if somebody broke into my home, I know exactly how I would have handled it. So when I started thinking in the different perspectives, I'm like, okay, this one really requires us putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. A couple of different people's shoes, and most of us don't have that level of empathy, or it's not a practice level of empathy where we can see the world through someone else's eyes. And this story requires us to actually, if we're going to be fair, I mean, some people don't care. Some people don't care about the family, and then other people don't care about the judge being offended. But if you really want to have some type of equity in this, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the different players.
Okay, so just so people know for sure, and they should go look up what happened with Justice Stevens. Basically, Justice Stevens was saying that it was offensive to him as a black man that in the I want to say in the witness report or witness damage report. Is that what it was?
It was called. I think the official name is the Victim's Impact Statement.
Okay, there you go. Victim Impact Statement. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He was basically reading this statement, which was submitted by the victims who were robbed at gunpoint in their home, and he basically said this part about your daughter being afraid of black men. That's not acceptable, because if these were white men, you could make a similar statement and expect somehow for that to have some impact on the punishment, right?
Right.
Is that what I mean? And it is interesting. I mean, what do you think about it? I mean, do you think that it's? I mean, on one hand, you could say, that maybe her fear would be logical based on what she went through and she's a child, but I kind of wondered. And maybe you can help me with this. I couldn't understand why that was necessary to put in the report. Like, what does the report really?
Exactly.
What's it supposed to do?
So, I mean, I'm no legal expert at all, but from everything that I've researched on it, the victim's impact statement is usually geared towards influencing the sentence, and it's the way of the victims to be able to convey how much pain they have suffered because of the person who is now convicted, and I haven't found any studies that shows a correlation between the statement and the type of sentence. But clearly it is at the moment of sentencing. And I think a lot of families use that, rightfully so. They want to tell their story, and that's the opportunity to tell it at that point. So the question is, how much does it impact the sentencing? And that's where I think it becomes really troublesome because of the language that they use and the ways they phrased it.
Yeah, so because I guess my thought would be, okay, if this is true,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, I don't blame the child for having that kind of reaction if she has not seen a lot of black people,
Right.
because she's a child. She doesn't know about the racial politics behind any of this. Um, but then I'm thinking, okay, so you're putting this in a report, and you're putting it in a report. Okay, so it may be true, but you're okay. So you're putting it in the report, hoping that perhaps that describing the impact of this crime, that will allow you to get justice. Like, 'cause that's the
Right.
reason we go to court, right? To get justice. Okay, so um, if they had been white, and it almost seems like this is almost leading us back to agreeing with Justice Stevens. If they had been white,
Would
first
they
of all,
feel the same?
it would have sounded ridiculous to say, my black daughter now fears all white men because I mean, it almost sounds like Justice Stevens is correct
Yeah.
that there was no point in putting this in there. Tell me where I could be wrong on this.
So, I mean, there's really not much room for you to be wrong in that regard for many reasons. It's because, first of all, putting it inside of this statement that's going to be entered into the official record of the court, and at the moment of sentencing, which means that the statement really is intended to impact the sentencing. I mean, it just bears so much of the systemic racism and the injustices that we see black men, in particular black people in general, face in the hand of our judicial system. So, I mean, for someone to expect Judge Stevens to not say anything about that, to not even notice it and just kind of gloss over it and not be offended, I think is very disingenuous, and it shows how much people who are complaining and trying to put him out of office, it shows how disconnected they are from anything else but their white experience.
Yeah, yeah, because it's almost like, if I put a statement that says, "My child now fears black men because she was a victim of a crime committed by a black man,"
Mm-hmm.
that's not that far away from saying something like this. My wife was reminded of why black men are dangerous and is now convinced that black men are dangerous because she was a victim of a crime by. In the second case, it's more like, you're talking about a confirmation of a preconceived bias. In
Right.
the first case, you're talking about the development of a bias that did not exist before. And in both cases, you're arguing that this should, or you would be arguing that this should lead to an increased penalty, or somehow further communicate the damage, as if the damage is greater because the perpetrators were black.
I think it's important to focus, and I exactly what you said is exactly true. But then I listened to Judge Stevens' words, and he said he's highly offended by this. Why is that a surprise to anyone that an accomplished black man would be offended that something like this is entered into the official record of his court? He's basically reading his own damnation, right? He's basically reading his own guilt, that now this little girl, and it's not so much about this. This is where people have a very difficult time. It's not about the girl's trauma, and the reason he's offended is not because the girl was traumatized. The reason he's offended is because this is being offered into the official records of the court, and he's being asked to read it, and he is being damned by these words because he's a successful black man who's done everything right, and now he's being lumped into the pool of all black people, and we're all given this black eye because of the actions of two. I don't see how anyone can. So in the video, I gave this example. If I were to condemn and damn every white person because of the real damage that white Americans have done to African Americans, I would instantly be labeled as a racist. No questions asked. In this world that we live in, when you call out racism, you're identified as a racist. If I were to condemn every white person because of the actions of a few, I would be labeled a racist. So it's being disingenuous to not be able to look and see why this would be offensive to Judge Stevens.
Okay, to play devil's advocate here, some people might say that Justice Stevens had no reason to feel condemned by this. That these are just the words of a little girl that are being communicated on paper. Maybe her parents don't agree with what she's saying. They're
Mm-hmm.
just describing very real trauma that she went through. This has nothing to do with you, Justice Stevens, because you're a judge, you're law abiding, and if anything, and again, I'm speaking through the eyes of a racist here, to be honest with you. I could come back and say, well, actually, this impact is showing that people like this give all black people a bad name, which is yet another reason why you, as an accomplished black man, should want this black man to go to jail, because he's now put a stain on the entire black community because of his behavior. What would you say to someone who made an argument like that?
I would say that's the epitome of white supremacy, because now you're asking a black man to ignore the systemic injustices that we see. It's that unwarranted fear that leads to wrong convictions. It's that unwarranted fear that makes a black man take a plea when he knows he's innocent, but because he looks at a jury and they're all going to instantly be fearful because he's a big black thug. Those types of injustices, I'm sure Judge Stevens has encountered in his profession. And so if anyone is going to be upset about it, it would be the judge who sees how the system is biased against African Americans. Not a single white person has to go into a courtroom and be fearful of getting a guilty plea, getting a guilty sentence simply because of their skin color. Nor do they have to fear getting a sentence that's 20% longer because of their skin color. I mean, it's been demonstrated that the impact of this fear of blackness on black defendants is longer sentences, wrongful convictions, and a myriad of things that white people never have to consider. So it's disingenuous, and it's the height of white supremacy to ask this black judge to separate himself from his blackness and from his experiences with injustices in this justice system, this so-called justice system, and just simply gloss over and pay no attention to what is the archetype example of why black people get these sentences that are longer than anyone else. It's not the little girl's trauma. Listen, if those boys had broken into my home, I would have made sure they would never have walked out of my home. So it's not about taking up for them just because they were black. I don't care what color they are. If they come into my house, I'm sure if they come to your house, we all know how we handled it. But we're talking about a justice system, and this justice system has been such where it is overly burdensome and takes so much away from the black community that it is entirely disingenuous to ask this black judge to now do the role of the white supremacist and implement the type of justice, so-called justice, that they would expect, instead of him doing what he believes is just and equitable according to the law.
It seems to me that a lot of what Justice Stevens is saying, and I can't speak for him, but I'm guessing, is he's kind of saying, look, if you're going to talk about a victim impact statement, you've got enough to go on without bringing up race, right? You got two guys that allegedly broke in your house, robbed your family at gunpoint. That's traumatic enough.
Yeah.
Let's focus on that. What does their being black have anything to really do with any of this? And I think that's the fundamental crux of what I'm seeing here, is that, look, if you're looking for justice and you're looking for these guys to be sentenced for what they did, this is going to happen because what they did, if they did it, was pretty horrible. Because they were convicted. So I guess if you assume the conviction is accurate, what they did was terrible.
Right.
And so that's where I see the concern. If I'm Justice Stevens and I mention that this offends me, that's what I'm thinking. And then you go beyond that, though. Another area where I think the racism does show its ugly head is the public's reaction to this. Oh, wait,
Absolutely.
wait, we thought you were one of our Negroes. We thought you were gonna just go along with whatever we tell you to
Right.
think. So the fact that you're standing up for black people, and especially the fact that you're even intervening in this issue where we're trying to destroy a poor black man for something he did that was wrong. If they committed this crime, the fact that you're intervening and somehow
Right.
empowering yourself to have an independent opinion that goes beyond what the state has sanctioned you to be allowed to say, we're now going to punish you. We're now going to remove you from your position of authority, your position of status, because you've let the cat out the bag and let you know that you're actually concerned about black people.
Right. I mean, and the public reaction is unfortunately par for the course, right? This is exactly what you can expect from actually both sides of the spectrum. I wanted to say conservatives because that's currently who's on the prowl right now, trying to destroy him. But we see this on the left too. We see everyone goes for blood, and they try to destroy the career and the life of someone. But in this case, the racism is so blatant from the public because now they are making it so much more a race issue when they ask us to take race out of everything. They're the first one to the front line to say, oh, he did something for this black boy because he was black. When in actuality, you could just do a quick Google search and realize that there are plenty of examples of first-time offenders getting probation for armed robbery. That's one of the things I was concerned about. I'm like, how do you get probation for armed robbery? And then when I did a 5 minutes worth of research, I see, oh, this happens pretty regularly. There's precedent for this. So if they asking people to be sincere about something, it might be a waste of my time. There's so much they're being so disingenuous with this, because if they actually took the time to see and look, they would realize there are plenty of examples of first-time offenders in armed robbery cases who get probation.
Well, there you go. Okay, so I think our verdict is that Justice Stevens doesn't deserve what he's getting. That he had a right to be concerned and offended.
Absolutely.
That it was completely unnecessary to even bring race into the conversation about. I mean, these guys robbed you at gunpoint. That should be bad enough.
That's enough.
They're
Right.
being black doesn't have to have anything to do with it.
One thing I wanted to point out when you shared, thank you for sharing that video, and I read the comments, and I read some of the comments, and I can't remember the lady's name who said it, but whoever you are, you know who you are. She said it's almost as though the people who wrote this thought that they would be writing to a white judge. Because if they had any idea in their brain that they were writing this to a black judge, they would never have written it. So I think that was a very astute observation.
That is a great comment. That is a great comment. I mean, it really does. It speaks to this whole conversation. In terms of letting them know that, look, based on the fact that you even made this comment, thinking that it was going to a white judge, and that the fact that you wouldn't have shared this comment with a black judge, says that even you knew that this comment was problematic when you wrote it
Absolutely.
down. So
Absolutely.
so that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought it up, man.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, this was great information, great analysis. I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Dixon.
My pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, everybody. This is Mr. Ben Dixon. He is the Benjamin, not Ben. Sorry,
Yeah.
Ben. He's an expert on what is it, international affairs and politics. What's your doctor going to be in again?
International development is I focus particularly on security studies, the intersection between how do we bring enough security to third world countries so that they can have a developed economy and grow. So international growth, but from the security perspective. And then, of course, my background in political science in general and economics, and just my experience as a black man in America. I think that everyone has a PhD in being black if you've been in America long enough.
See, so in other words, translation is he's a smart black man. And we need a whole lot more smart black men on TV, but they always seem to want to put the dumb black men on TV, and that's what pisses us off. So,
we have to talk about that. We definitely got to talk about that one.
We'll talk about that when you get your show on MSNBC, because that's what you deserve, much more so than I. So thank you very much, brother. I appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate it, Doc.
All right, everybody. Once again, this is Mr. Benjamin Dixon. You can go to his website at thebenjamindixonshow.com. Dr. Boyce Watkins from yourblackworld.net. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone. Peace.